Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining us. We are at 11:59. We're letting people in the room, and there are a few people who are still joining. We have the Leadership Institute and Society of Innovators. I'd like to thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to join us for today's Lunch and Lead seminar. We are really excited to have our guest join us, Jen Trowbridge. She is the president and CEO of the Northwest Indiana Community Action. And of course, my colleague Sheila Matias is here with us today. Sheila is actually going to lead this interview or this fireside chat, I should say. Before I pass over to Sheila, I just want to acknowledge a few of our special guests. We want to say a special thank you to the Student Life Office. We see that you guys are hosting a watch party again today, so welcome. Please be sure to leave your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure we get to those towards the end. Also, I see quite a few of our L&I and Explorer participants. Thank you guys so much. It's always good to see you all. And then last but not least, Mr. John Davies, who joins us all the time for these seminars. John, it's really good to see you today. And I'm going to pass over to Sheila.
Well, hello, everyone. It's great to see you virtually, and feel free to, if you want to eat your lunch while you're listening in today, feel free to put up your, stop your video and just listen. We will have an active chat going on while we're listening to Jen's conversation, but we are really delighted to continue the Lunch and Lead series. This is our third year, and it has grown and grown, and so a lot of people have a great interest in just learning from others and hearing other leadership stories, because that's where we get inspired. And it's often kind of like sneaking behind the curtain and seeing that everything is not as smooth as one would assume. When you see someone as a successful servant leader, you presume they've got it all together. And sometimes it's important to know that we are all works in progress. Leadership is a muscle that you have to flex to get it stronger. And so we'll hear today from Jen. Makisha mentioned a little bit about Jen Trowbridge, our guest today. Jen, thank you so much for making time for us. I know you're in a busy strategic planning work with your team, and so I really, on behalf of PNW, I really appreciate you making time for us. As Makisha mentioned, she is the president and CEO of Northwest Indiana Community Action, which is an agency that focuses on helping those in need, helping those who suffer food insecurity, for example, housing insecurity. She has spent her career focused on helping others. So Jen will tell us a lot more about her background, her journey, so to speak. But I did want to mention that servant leadership is kind of a bit of a tricky word. It sounds like you're serving others, but what you are really doing as a leader is putting the needs of other people on your team front and center, so that you are focused on people. You get a lot of more with sugar than vinegar, that's for sure. But in leadership, the top-down leadership, which we have all been accustomed to in corporations and banks, isn't always the most effective way of building a strong culture. So servant leadership really focuses on the growth and well-being and empowerment of our employees. The more you focus on allowing your employees to be their authentic selves, you build trust, you build culture, and you build an atmosphere where people can try new things. They become really invested in their work. And so rather than focusing on profits and profitability and products, a servant leader focuses on people. And then the idea is that as you focus on your team, the team members who also supervise people will turn around and manage that same servant leadership philosophy with the people that they manage. So I'm really delighted today because Jen is a perfect example of a servant leader, and we'd love to hear her story. So Jen, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you start us off by just telling us about your personal leadership journey? Tell us your story.
Sheila, thank you so much for having me do this. I was very honored and humbled that I got a chance to share this. I have labeled myself as a servant leader for years, and I've even toggled a few other descriptors in there because I think servant leadership also encompasses situational leadership and transformational leadership. And so there's quite a few philosophies. And I think for me, I came to that conclusion because of this full leadership journey that started when I was a teen and I didn't even know I was on it. And so naturally, I wanted to do something to enhance a peer culture. I think I was 17 at the time, and I was afforded an opportunity to lead a group and figure out ways that we would be satisfied and feel more valued as a whole, and what we could do to talk to our leadership of the organization. So I got to organize it and lead it. I had no idea that that would be at the beginning of trying something new. And so from there, I had opportunities. When I went to college, I needed to afford college. It was pretty expensive, and I didn't have a lot of means. And so I needed to be in a position where I could have housing for free. And someone told me that, well, if you're a resident advisor, if you're an RA, you can live on campus for free. So I took that leadership opportunity, and then that obviously spun into something else, because when you start on that path and you start to build a portfolio or a resume or whatever, and you put those components on there, people get drawn to it. And so from there, then I got into a more professional space, and was able to take on a role where I got to lead. It was actually overseas, and I got to lead a daycare center. And the reason why that was important was because I happened to have a degree. So because I was an RA and I could go to college and I could afford college, I got this degree. And then when I lived somewhere else and I needed a job, they hired me because I had this degree, and they said, we need you to lead. I'm like, I don't know anything about kids. I didn't even really have kids. I didn't know much about kids. And so they said, well, you have the credentials. We need you to lead. So there are times in your journey, in my journey, where I wasn't planning on it. It wasn't something that I sought to do, but an opportunity presented itself. And then that led into the next. And so for me, the personal leadership journey, I feel like life also had a path for me, and I chose to take things along that path and to further develop myself.
So it sounds like you had to show a certain amount of bravery as different opportunities were presenting themselves. Can you talk a little bit about the opportunity? All of us face opportunities, choices every day, every year. We face different opportunities. Talk to me a little bit about how you've approached that, and how do you analyze whether the opportunity is right for you?
Oh, as you're asking those questions, Sheila, I'm immediately thinking about how many times have I felt totally uncomfortable and felt like I was taking a risk. Probably more times than I felt comfortable, honestly. So I think there's something about wanting to have some achievement, wanting to see the possibility in myself. What can I do? What am I capable of? And so when an opportunity, came in front of me, I wasn't sure if I should take it. And you are at a crossroads. What if I fail? What if I don't do well? What if I can't make this program grow that they hired me to do? What if I'm not liked by my team and I'm not accepted, right? We talk all the time about, like, should you be liked? Does it matter? It does matter. It does matter when we have belongingness and we have relatability around us. It absolutely matters how we perform and how we interact with each other. We don't do things necessarily to be liked, but we do things to feel like we belong to a group. We do things to help the group. So anytime you're afforded an opportunity to join another organization or even get promoted to run a group, these are all the thoughts that you have. We all have insecurities around that too. For me, though, I knew that I had a support system that I could lean on. And that is something that it doesn't have to be family. It can be friends. It could be people in an association or a special group to the side, but we need support groups. So when an opportunity I was with a company for several years, and it was a for-purpose company, a nonprofit for-purpose company. And I had a chance to leave and go into for-profit healthcare, which any good healthcare company is going to be aggressive and they're competitive and they're going to grow. And so in order for me to make that switch and decide, do I want to leave this for-purpose work for a for-profit work? Even though the for-profit work was meaningful, it was taking care of kids on life support and kids who needed home care with major medical conditions. It was very meaningful work, but regardless, the bottom line was about generating money for the agency. Did I do it? Would my servant leadership skills, would my philosophies actually translate into this kind of entity? And so when you have a support system to soundboard with and say, hey, you do things for the right reasons. And you always want to make sure that your quality matters, and it matters to you how you interact with the most entry-level position to the CEO of the organization. You know, you're not going to go wrong. When your intentions are there and you're willing to put the work, you're not going to go wrong. And so having those kind of support systems helping you make decisions, that's always been easier for me to take the risky ones. It gives me confidence, but also that if it didn't work out, I could do something different, right? It is a choice. So I think your question was, how do you make these choices? And it's weighing the risks. It's giving people, or giving people giving me confidence that I can do it.
So taking risks is inherent to being a servant leader from what you say. You're calculating risks, however, so you're making risks and you're thinking about the various choices that you have. But you stress a lot about your support group, and I think that all leaders need support. We need to be able to draw strength from other people who might see something in us that we don't see in ourselves. So as you traveled through your the stages of your career, as your career has developed, can you share some of the leading people who mentored you, who shared, who even inspired you by just observing them from a distance? And what was it that that you were able to glean from them? Because I really think that leaders, we often see people on television or, you know, in the news, and we think, oh, that's leadership. But leadership is often right next door. It's in your faith community, it's in your place of business, and it's not always the person at the top, it's other people as well. So talk to us a little bit about those people who were able to give you those nuggets that have helped you grow.
Yeah, this is a really nice question, because you don't always get a chance to thank people who shape you and influence us. The very first role that I had, when I told you I was living overseas and I was at a daycare, and there was a woman there and she was in a leadership position there, and her name's Crystal Malloy. And Crystal was, you know, a vivacious African-American woman who just gave so much to everyone who worked in this daycare facility. She would bring us gifts. She would invite people to her home. And we were in Germany. And if anybody out of here has ever been to Germany, they have the Autobahn, and there's no speed limit on the Autobahn. You can go as fast as you want to go. And Crystal had a rental sports car. And I remember she got to the daycare, and I was getting ready for a lunch break, and she's like, Jen, have you ever been in this? And I'm sure if I knew my cars better, I'd remember what it was, but it was super fancy. And she's like, have you ever been in this car, right? And I'm like, no, I've never done that. She's like, oh my gosh, you gotta come on. And so I just remember like going over 100 miles an hour or something on the Autobahn, and it was such a great experience. But for Crystal, it was just, she was such a generous person. She was the director of this facility. She was always willing to listen, but she created relationships with people. It wasn't about being a supervisor who said, you have to do this and you can't do that. It was about getting to know you as a person, and then just being generous in all different ways. So Crystal is someone that taught me that generosity can belong in the workplace. From there, I got to work with a woman named Tina Gonterman, and she was with me at the pediatric home care agency. And Tina, to this day, she's a woman, she'll walk in a room and she will make everybody feel so comfortable that you end up just sharing with her anything about your life. And Tina taught me about giving people confidence, and that when you care genuinely about them and you give them comfortable environment to work within, and you help them with confidence, that begets results. And so I remember even using this. I guess I'll use it. I'll share it with all of you. So you have to make big decisions on hiring people on your team. And Tina was the one who taught me that you can make the interview process as comfortable as possible. Get some laughs in there, really get people to relax their shoulders. You will understand a lot more about them and make a better decision. I have avoided some probably really bad hires with that strategy. And I also have had some really great ones with that. So she was also pivotal. There really is a long list, but someone else had taught me about the backdrop and the background that people come to work, they bring their whole self. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm getting to the place where I'm not as much of a caregiver. There's all these things that are who we are. And when I walk in a doorway, I'm still Jen Trowbridge and I still have all of those things. So just because I walk through a threshold does not mean that they go away. And so when Sue Gregg taught me that we are whole people. And so if we've got a job to do in a work environment, understanding a little bit of the background of who people are can help how we ask for something or when we bring up topics or making things relatable so that people can understand them. So that was another really big lesson for me that I got to see firsthand and learn from. And then there's been other people along the way. And I don't want to also misstep, but, we have partners in our lives. And so my husband has been a great partner for me. We've been in each other's world for a decade. And he has taught me so much about leadership as well, because he's more seasoned than I am and has more years of leadership behind him. But he really taught me the art of possibility. He is someone that when a challenge would present itself, he could navigate it, figure it out, and give the confidence of we'll figure it out together, especially if things are too big, right? But he keeps this calm demeanor about it and really shared with me that when you're in a leadership role, you all know you get handed things that can be really intense. You can be handed things and have to make calls on things that are really emotional. If you are also in an emotional state, you can't always guide or respond in a way to achieve the results. And so he taught me about how we recenter ourselves as leaders. And when these things happen, we don't react, but we respond to them. And it helps us get it right. So a culmination of many people really have led to shape my style, my authenticity. But I had to be open to that. So for me, and maybe for all of you, we don't have all the answers, one person. I can be really great at something and definitely not at something else. And so I'm really open to learning from other people and observing from them. And I think that everybody that's in our space has something that they can do to contribute to our growth. So thank you.
Now, that was a beautiful answer. You mentioned so many key theories. John Davies jumped on the art of possibility. Thank you, John. I was jotting that down as well. The art of possibility and how, your partner, your husband, was able to share his wisdom, and then also that you're open enough to look for people around you that might have a nugget of inspiration that you can learn from. Often we think it's the leader at the top that has all the skills, when actually there are many styles of leadership, many ways for people to lead. It isn't about position; it's about the skills and the skills, the possibilities, the opportunities that present themselves. You used the word authentic, and I'm particularly like that word. When we share in Leadership Northwest Indiana our leadership lessons that are based on research, we talk a lot about authentic leadership and transformational leadership. In regards to servant leadership, how do those things work together in your world?
Yeah, I think for me, where I kind of see this going is in servant leadership, you have to genuinely like people. So I just like I like being around people, and it's not an extrovert introvert thing. I don't mean that. I'm curious about people by nature. I love hearing about everything. I really enjoy talking about what people like to do in their free time. I'm curious. There's only so many things I'm interested in myself, but I don't know anything about horses, and you're in a question, you're into horses and grooming and whatever. I'm just curious about how those things go. And so I also want people to succeed. And so genuinely like people, you want them to do well. And that I don't always see that in human nature show up. I think, especially in the workplace, I see a couple things. I see ego easily. I see competition, which I'm very competitive and very competitive with my husband. But I see competition that's not healthy always in the workplace. And we always go to a place of like, people who don't perform well, I think we automatically go to this grass is greener. Well, then they shouldn't work with us. We don't want them on our team. Maybe they don't belong at our agency. And I'm not built that way. And so I believe that, when people engage at work, if they're underperforming, there's a lot of reasons for that underperformance. And it very well could be because of knowledge they don't have. It could be a skill they don't have. It could be because no one actually ever gave them feedback as well. Is that a common one? There's all these things that can happen, but when you care genuinely about someone and you really want them to succeed at what they're doing, that shows up. And as a servant leader, if you have that as your baseline, that you genuinely care about this person's success, not just here, but in their whole life. Like if your work's good, it helps to make your personal life good. And if your personal life's good, vice versa, then you can help determine what those needs are, what those gaps are that are helping them to achieve their intention. And you help deliver that. And that's what servant leadership to me is about, what you had mentioned earlier. It's about the needs. You're meeting people's needs. You have to identify those needs, and you have to solve for how you can help get that accomplished.
Thank you for that. I did a little bit of reading before this session, so I would make sure I knew what the most current comments were about servant leadership and how it bumps up against the classic traditional leadership, top-down leadership, where the boss takes the credit when things are good, and then people's heads get cut off when things aren't going well. Talk to me a little bit about the problems that may arise in the workforce, and in your, there's stress in work, there's deadlines, and there's challenges and opportunities and funding. How does servant leadership kind of mesh with the norm of work? Is, it ebbs and flows in positive ways and negative ways. And how does servant leadership help manage those stressful moments?
Yeah, there's no shortcomings in stressful moments in social services. And we have multiple competing priorities all the time, and not enough time and not enough people. And there's just a lot of different elements at play that create that environment. Yet we still have success proven over and over again. And you can do that because you're thinking about people first. It's all about relationships and people first. And when you can figure out what people are needing in order for them to succeed, you see that the results of that are going to turn into what you're looking for. So how does that show up in an organization? You have all these things happening. Sometimes people are just overwhelmed. And I see that probably as the number one emotion, that comes, people are overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And so what do they need? They don't need me to add one more thing to their plate right now. That's for sure. I'm not gonna say, well, you need some training on how to manage your feelings of being overwhelmed. Like, no, that's not going to work, right? But instead, if it's saying, talk to me, relax your shoulders, let's spend a little time together, right? What's going on? Usually you can help share perspective, right? Sometimes people, you need to understand, like, do they have too many priorities and they don't know how to rate them? They don't know where to start. That's where you're identifying the need as a servant leader. I'm not going to tell them maybe where to start, but I'm going to listen to them, hear what they have going on, and ask questions that kind of coach them into what they need, right? And so if someone's feeling overwhelmed because they don't have enough time to do something, maybe it's helping taking something off the plate. So to me, again, it's trying to figure out what it is that is, how do you match action to result? And so if I'm leading a team and I know I have to get certain results, and I learn and understand the people that I'm working with that are going to be delivering those results, then I need to know what are the barriers that are going to get in the way for them getting that work done. And some of those barriers are tangible things that you have to make changes as an organization, and some of them are personal. If you've heard of the phrase, that people get in their own way, you got someone, you're like, man, they just get in their own way over and over again. You could, practice servant leadership by understanding, what do they need to prevent that? And I'm going to go back to feedback again. I'm going to do it because that's a big place for people, even for myself, is in order for us to grow and to match perception with intention, we have to get the feedback to do that. And so if we can be candid with each other, that also contributes to some good results. So what I find too in social services, and especially at Northwest Indiana Community Action, is we're big on some of that candidness because we care genuinely and we want you to succeed. I'm going to give you feedback in order for helping you succeed. When we withhold our feedback, when we choose not to tell people things that would help them, match their perception and intention better, we're too empathetic. We're ruining them with our empathy. Well, we don't want to hurt their feelings. Well, they're not doing what they want to do. They're not getting the results. They're not achieving. They're not feeling confident. They're not, reaching their goals. So we have to dial down, I think, that empathy sometimes, and we have to turn up that candidness with each other.
So candid with kindness, it sounds like you're saying, to give feedback in a direct and kind way, but still not avoid the conversation. Many of us are raised in cultures where avoiding confrontation is preferred. And so, a leader really, from what you're saying and from my own experience, a leader really can't avoid the uncomfortableness. And Brene Brown talks a lot about that. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable doesn't mean bad. It means that you're in a space where you are, trying new things, seeing different opportunities arise, seeing challenges, and figuring out how to manage them. Are there any risks? You are a CEO. There are lots of different CEOs, and everyone brings their personality and their learning and their skill development to the table in their leadership. Some people would listen to you and they would say, oh, it's really soft. It's kind of squishy. How do you get results when you don't tell people what to do? So, if you're not bossy, and for women, it's a hard line, because if you're bossy, they call you the other B word, and a man, they're like, boy, he's tough, So how do you navigate that? Sticking to your values, sticking to your authenticity, and really focusing on your team and how to develop them, but also showing, man, I can get results.
That's a great one, because I'll tell you, I'm very results driven. And I have proven years of results driven things that I didn't know I could do. I tried and I'm like, look at those results, right? But servant leadership does not mean you're not accountable. It does not mean you don't get clear expectations. On the contrary, right? If I want people to succeed as a servant leader, I'm going to set some pretty clear expectations. I'm going to have measurable goals. We might even have aggressive goals. We can have all of those things as a servant leader. To run an organization, run a team, run a business, be in a competitive environment even, you can do all of that as a servant leader. It's about how you approach your people. You're still being clear with what what the outcome needs to be. You're just not dictating how to get there. And I've been lucky because I've been working with a lot of leaders for so many years now. But on occasion, there's turnover. And then I get to work directly with the frontline team, and it is cool. It reminds me of how much more autonomy we can give people in doing their work. I even try to describe some of our strategy, and I don't know if this is in any servant leader book, so, but it's like math. We need a result, but I don't care how you get to that result. I just need the right result, right? So you have your own method, you have, your style, you have all of that, use it. What can I do to help you get to your own style, your own pathway, etc. We just know what the destination is together. I think the criticisms with servant leadership, they're more about, I don't know if it's an old school way of thinking. I feel like the authoritarian style is just out. I can't think of anyone who is in the last several generations who, at least in Indiana culture, I would say American culture, but I don't know if I have the scope to say that. But in our culture, people want to feel valued, and servant leadership gives that affordability. And people want some opportunity to really be the best at who they can be, especially in a work environment. And that's what you're doing as a servant leader, is you're elevating their ability. I have a title that gives me whatever, but I have a title that basically, if I told someone I need this and I need this by tomorrow, they would totally do it. But if I actually went to someone and said, hey, listen, I'm dealing with this, and if I don't have this by tomorrow, this is what happens. Can you help me with that? And they're like, I got you. I'm helping. I'm saving the CEO. I'm doing something really cool over here for the organization. Just flipping the script. And it makes a big difference, because now the person that's doing that work, they feel empowered, they feel excited, they feel helpful, they feel valued. If I just dictate, do this for me and do it tomorrow, they're going to get the job done too. They're not going to go the extra mile, and they're not going to have all these other feelings about it. And then they're going to think that that's what leadership should be. I tell you what to do and when to do it, and you deliver for me. It doesn't look like that, and it doesn't feel satisfying, and people can't be high performing if they're treated in that way. They can become high performing when they're treated in a more, it is nurturing, but I wouldn't say servant leadership is soft, right? But in a more nurturing way.
Yeah, I think your example was really spot on. We have two really good comments in the chat, so I'm going to jump to the chat. From John Davies, how has innovation impacted servant leadership, or maybe how should it impact servant leadership? So in your style, does innovation, or even thinking outside the box, how does that affect your leadership and the culture that you're continuing to build?
I think it really opens the box. I think because in the servant leadership style, it's about, it's not about being prescriptive. It's not about dictating so much as it is about, again, we need to achieve results somewhere in this space. And what can you do with your role, your expertise, your characteristics to get us there? And so now, technology, a beeline for technology as soon as you say innovation. And so looking at how that can influence the results is profound. We just did, you mentioned Sheila this morning. So I've been in a strategic leadership experience today with our senior leader team. And part of it is my role is to help them think a little differently too. And so we actually did a whole little challenge where they had to write, a 300-word something, and they had 2 minutes to do it, right? And the team, bless them, but they're going to Google and they're like copying and pasting and going. And so it was like, who's doing Chat GPT? Who's doing Claude AI? Where's technology taking us now, where we have some opportunities to really tailor and change social services with technology? We know we have to serve more people with less people. Innovation is going to get us there. And so as a servant leader, I'm not going to prescribe to you, again, how to get the results. I'm going to tell you, these are the results that we're looking for. And my favorite is when you tell someone, this is what I need, and they go more than that. They deliver even further for you because you let them take risks, because you're supportive of that they're able to have better results than you ever thought possible.
I think that's one of my biggest aha moments in my own leadership journey, is the fact that when you give people the opportunity and the space, they first of all, they give it with such grace and a giving heart, and they usually go and give you more than you even thought possible or that you asked for. So I think you're really spot on with that. There was another comment that I think maybe Shauna wants us to talk a little bit deeper about. She mentioned the words that you used. You said match perception to intention. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I wonder if that came from Shayna,
Mhm.
from the Fairhaven Crisis Center. So that's that is something that has been helpful for me. So I am a fan of executive coaching. I want to do a quick shout to that. I didn't know executive coaching was a thing until I was given that gift by my last organization. And they had the funds behind them that they wanted their senior leadership to have this experience where you got assigned a coach for 6 months and you could really reflect and get a 360 on who you are, how you're perceived, and from different departments, different levels in the organization. And it really taught me there about perception to intention. So through the executive coaching, you learn that, you show up to meetings, you have conversations, you deliver on, some kind of project, and your intent is that you are going to, showcase your department in this really great light of all the things that they've done, or your intent is that you're gonna raise funds for a pilot that you want, to accomplish. But when you deliver it, that's not what happened. And people perceived you as being not as much of a team player, and you were just being boastful, and you're just asking for money just because. I mean, and so we do this all the time in our lives, in personally and professionally, where somebody comes into work and they have a mean face, they're wearing a mean face and they don't say hi, and you're like, man, that person's so rude. But they actually just took care of their aging mom who just went into the hospital, and they have a terrible headache and they don't feel good, and they just walked in the building. And so that is, we see this all the time, and we judge for it all the time. And so we're trying to figure out, if we assume positive intent, then we know that we can respond better and differently to each other. And so as a leader, I really recommend a 360 for people that are willing to do that. I've had several. They're not easy to absorb. A lot of people are giving feedback, and you do it with the right professional setup. Don't do a 360 on your own. You need the right professional entity to deliver that for you. You get really good feedback from that, and then you can choose what you want to do with that feedback, but it helps you better match what you're trying to do, what you're intending to do with your boss, with your family, with people you're leading, to the actual actions that you do that match that. And so that's the part that's really important. And one more thing I want to say about that. We take care of a lot of people experiencing financial hardship. Whether you have coworkers or you have peers, your students, if you work at a bank, you're interacting with a whole diverse group of people around you. And we have a lot going on in our worlds right now. And so there's a lot of reasons for people to show up and be who they are every day. And our value at NICA is that we believe people act with positive intent. I believe that when people come to work, they don't come to work and say, I think I'm just going to do a really crappy job today. They don't. And I think I'm just going to come into work today and I'm going to bother the people around me. Or I think I'm going to lead a conversation and I'm going to offend 3 people. We don't do that. It happens, but that's not what our intent is, right? And so when that happens, what I challenge people in our organization to do is to pause. And you're going to assume positive intent. That person didn't come in here trying to make your day bad and yell at you behind the front desk. What does she need, right? She's scared. She's stressed. She hasn't had anybody give her a break, right? Maybe in 2 months, let alone 2 days. And so if you know that, and she's coming at you, it's not about you, it's about them. And how do we respond differently? And so to me, servant leadership is also about making sure that we're assuming positive intent and we're getting to the root cause issue of what's going on with that person that we're interfacing with, so we can, again, achieve what we're trying to accomplish.
Sounds like perception is really important, and being able to look behind what's obvious and find out what the root causes are. We have a couple really good questions, so I'm going to jump to the questions. Nathan asks, is there a relationship between servant leadership and alpha type leadership, or are they more opposites?
I don't think I can answer that specifically. I don't think they're opposites. I guess I would try to describe people like, you've got like a type A and a type B personality. And I would tell people I'm a type B wannabe. I really am a type A. So again, I think they're not, I think you can have a dominating, if that's what you mean, a dominating alpha personality. I think you can still have a dominating personality. Your actions, though, your genuity, your response to help nurture and bring out the best in people so they can, achieve for you. I think it's about how you handle it, not necessarily your dominating personality. But I'm sure you've got some well-educated people on this lunch that might have a better answer for that.
That's a great answer. Let's skip to the next one. Kurt asks, how do you identify and develop servant leaders for the future of your organization?
Oh yeah, role modeling is big. And I think aligning on these values is important. I've found over the years now that people either gravitate towards it, they're all in, or maybe they're not. And I'll reference Jim Collins, right? Good to great. Not everybody's in the right seat, not everybody's in the right organization.
Yeah.
So there are times where maybe people who aren't comfortable with a servant leadership approach. I have not encountered many. I really have not, maybe two, that just didn't jive with it. And maybe it wasn't even about servant leadership. It was about something else. Mm-hmm. So generally people like people that are invested in them.
Gotcha. Shameless plug there from the Leadership Institute. Makisha wanted to remind us that we offer Leadership Northwest Indiana, which has a 360 assessment guided by our coaching team, which are academics and leadership practitioners. So anyone want to follow that, you can go to our website or call one of us and we'll get you hooked up. We try to respect people's time, so we've got about 4 more minutes. I wanted to talk to you about, you've given us so many nuggets, Jen. You've really using your experience, you've really kind of crystallized authenticity and building culture and building an emotionally safe space where people can be creative and they can take risks. But is there any piece of advice that other leaders to the people on the call to encourage them to take that risk, use their talents, try to develop their leadership around focusing on people and working with people to get optimum results in their personal life, in their professional life, in their community life? Advice from other pieces of advice you'd give them.
Yeah, a piece of advice for me would be if you really want to succeed in this kind of leadership style, you have to be open to feedback and you need to be open to some of those hard questions. Be brave, ask tough questions, and be able to accept those responses and then grow from that. So I think the advice that I would have for anyone would be, we all have talents and we have skills that we bring, and you have to know how you're perceived so you can match, again, perception and intention. And so if you can get feedback from people, then it really provides you a clear window and maybe even a pathway, whatever, for you to get to that leadership journey.
I love that. Nathan jumped on and gave a book recommendation, Lead for God's Sakes, by a Northern Indiana author. So that's it. Thank you, Nathan, for sharing that. We also, of course, always encourage people to pick up a Brene Brown book. You can't go wrong. She really focuses on servant leadership and, the old-fashioned get to know your people, because once you develop a relationship with people, as you said, Jen, you can really understand them, and together you can work towards your leadership goals, your organization organizational goals. We are going to close out so everyone can finish having their lunch before they have to sit back at their desk at 1 o'clock. Thank you everyone for joining us. Jen, thank you so much for sharing your time. I know it's been a busy day, busy week for you, but you really were generous and gave us lots of inspirational nuggets. So thank you so much. We'll see you next month, everyone. Bye-bye now.